Across the globe, countless peoples, separated by towering mountains, vast deserts, and endless seas, speaking different tongues and shaped by distinct cultures, nonetheless hold three memories in common. The first shared memory is the myth of human creation from Earth. In Chinese mythology, Nuwa fashioned humans from clay. In Western traditions, God created man from dust. Indigenous cultures across Africa, South America, and Australia also have similar stories of humans emerging from soil. This reflects a striking commonality among diverse peoples. The second shared memory is of a primordial flood. In Chinese history, there is the tale of Yu the Great controlling the waters. In the Bible, the story of Noah's Ark recounts a similar deluge. Based on calculations from the Hebrew calendar, the flood associated with Noah coincides with the era of Emperor Yao in China and is believed to have impacted the entire globe. In its wake, most civilizations were wiped out. Only Chinese civilization is said to have endured. The third memory shared across civilizations is the enduring belief that humanity awaits the return of the divine. In the Bible, a day is foretold when God will return to judge the living and the dead, with the rebirth of Israel seen as the twilight before this reckoning. Buddhist texts speak of Maitreya's descent to earth and of the Indumbara flower's rare bloom, an omen of the wheel-turning king's arrival to spread the Dharma and guide souls to salvation. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs embalmed their bodies into mummies, entrusting their slumber to the promise that the gods would one day awaken them. Across continents, echoes of this hope persist. The Maya left behind 13 crystal skulls, said to summon the divine when gathered as one. It is a mythic thread that binds humanity in its longing for transcendence. Across the tapestry of human civilization, three memories persist: origin, warning, and hope. Origin speaks to the divine breath that shaped humanity. Warning reminds us that when morality decays across lands, catastrophe looms. Hope whispers of the return of the divine. Even as empires fall and languages vanish, these truths remain, etched into myth, memory, and soul. They are the essence of cultural survival. If all else fades, let these three endure. And of the third, hope. The book of Revelation envisions a final reckoning, a clash between light and darkness before the last judgment. Those who stand with the divine shall enter paradise. Those who choose the path of corruption, who swear allegiance to evil, betray truth, indulge in lust, deceit, and violence, will face eternal suffering. In the end, the question is not what will happen, but how each soul will choose when the moment comes. Long before our present civilization emerged, humanity endured a cataclysm so vast it reshaped the earth itself, a colossal flood that drowned continents and swept away entire societies. Over time, archaeologists have unearthed traces of this ancient deluge, both direct and subtle, embedded in the layers of our planet's forgotten past. Meanwhile, cultural anthropologists, delving into the origin myths of peoples across the globe, have uncovered a haunting truth. From the jungles of the Amazon to the steppes of Central Asia, ancient legends echo with uncanny unity. They speak of repeated cataclysms, but one stands apart, a primordial flood that extinguished a world, sparing only a handful of survivors. To this day, more than 600 such flood legends have been preserved, scattered like fragments of memory across the cultures of the earth. Across continents and centuries, the memory of a great flood echoes through the myths of countless civilizations, from China and Japan to the rainforests of Malaysia, the highlands of Laos and Thailand, the plains of India, the deserts of Egypt, the islands of Australia, the ruins of Greece, and the oral traditions of Africa, South America, and North America's indigenous tribes. What's astonishing is the consistency. These stories speak of floodwaters rising to overwhelming heights, enduring for 100 to 120 days, with a climactic peak lasting around 40 days. Despite vast cultural differences, the rhythm of this ancient catastrophe remains uncannily the same. In the timeless verses of the Epic of Gilgamesh, the flood descends with apocalyptic force. The heavens press down upon the earth. In a single day, all of humankind was swept away, and the mountains vanished beneath the rising tide. This ancient lament captures the sheer scale of destruction, a moment when the boundary between sky and land dissolved and the world was swallowed whole. In the ancient myths of Babylon, the god Bel, incensed by the corruption of mankind, resolved to cleanse the earth with a flood. But the god Ea, moved by compassion, whispered a warning to an old man dwelling at the mouth of the river. "Choose your vessel," he said, "and prepare all that you will need." Then the skies broke open. For 7 days the rain fell in sheets, drowning the world. When it finally ceased, only the highest peaks pierced the surface of the waters, silent witnesses to a vanished age. Across the scattered islands of Polynesia, the voices of ancestors still echo with tales of a great flood, an ancient deluge that reshaped their world. Woven into these legends are haunting memories of the sea itself rising without warning, swallowing the shores in a sudden, unstoppable surge. In Indian mythology, there is a tale of a hermit named Manu. While bathing in the sacred Ganges River, he unknowingly rescued a small fish. The fish warned him of an impending flood that would devastate all life and urged him to prepare. When the flood came, the fish led Manu's great boat to safety. Manu's descendants became the forebearers of the Indian people, and the Manusmriti, or Laws of Manu, was passed down through him. Across the vast expanse of the Americas, among more than 130 indigenous nations, one theme echoes with haunting consistency: the Great Flood. In the ancient Mexican Codex Chimalpopoca, the catastrophe is rendered in terrifying detail. A flood came, the skies turned black, and rain as dark as night began to fall. The downpour raged without end, day and night. People ran for their lives. They climbed onto rooftops, but the houses crumbled, casting them down. They clung to treetops, but the trees shook them loose. They fled into caves, only to be buried as the earth collapsed around them. Thus, humanity was utterly destroyed. The flood, riding on the back of violent storms, swept across the continent in a single night, drowning plains and low hills alike. Only those who lived upon or reached the high mountains were spared. In the sacred chronicles of the Maya, the flood is remembered not merely as a storm, but as a cosmic reckoning. It was a ruinous destruction, a great flood, and the people drowned beneath the heavy, viscous rain that poured from the sky. The imagery is haunting, rain not just as water, but as a suffocating force descending from above to erase a world. In the ancient lore of Peru's indigenous peoples, the god Parikaka once wandered into a village alive with celebration. Dressed in rags, he was overlooked by the revelers.
No one offered him food, nor spared him a glance. Only one soul saw him, a young woman, gentle and kind, who gave him a sip of wine. In gratitude, Parikaka whispered a warning. "In 5 days," he said, "this village will be no more. Find shelter and speak of this to no one." And so it came to pass. On the 5th night, Parikaka summoned the storm. Winds howled, waters surged, and by dawn, the village lay beneath the flood. Even the mountains bowed beneath the rising tide. The Sumerians, one of the earliest civilizations in the Middle East around 3000 BCE, left behind thousands of cuneiform inscribed clay tablets discovered in the desert regions of present-day Iraq. These tablets preserve the mythology and legends of Mesopotamia, including vivid accounts of a massive flood that once shook the earth in prehistoric times. Some of the inscriptions contain remarkable details about this ancient catastrophe. In a time long forgotten, 4 divine powers held dominion over the earth: the sky god, the great guardian, the goddess of war and love, and the water god. Of them all, it was the water god who watched over humanity with tender concern, a silent guardian of mortal life. But the world had grown crowded. Humanity multiplied, and with it came a deafening roar, like wild bulls bellowing across the land, so loud that even the heavens could find no rest. The great guardian, wearied by the endless noise, turned to the divine council and declared, "The cries of mankind pierce our peace. We can no longer endure their clamor." And thus, the gods reached a grim consensus: humanity must be undone. Out of deep compassion for humankind, the water god came to the palace. From beyond the reed wall, he called to the king within, his voice solemn with warning. "A great calamity is coming," he said. "You must act now to save your family." Then he spoke with urgency and grace. "Tear down your house and build a vessel. Abandon your treasures, flee while there is still time. Do not cling to the dust of the world. It is your soul that must be saved. Listen well. Dismantle your dwelling and construct a boat with measured precision, its length and width in perfect proportion. Within it, preserve the seeds of every living creature upon the earth." The king did not hesitate. He set to work immediately, constructing a great vessel. He loaded all his belongings aboard and stored the seeds of every living creature in the ship's hold. Once his family was safely aboard, he brought cattle, horses, and other livestock, along with skilled craftsmen from every profession. Then the appointed day arrived. At dawn, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The storm god rode forth. Thunder echoed across the sky, and daylight gave way to darkness. For 6 days and nights, the storm and flood raged in unison. Waves surged violently, and the waters swallowed the world. On the 7th morning, the storm abated. The sea grew calm, and the floodwaters began to recede. A deathly silence blanketed the earth. The ocean stretched endlessly, smooth as a rooftop. All living things had perished beneath the waves. Nothing remained but a vast, white expanse of water. About 40 miles away, a mountain rose from the flood. The ship drifted toward it and came to rest on its slope. The king fastened the vessel securely to Mount Ararat. On the 7th morning, he opened the birdcage and released a dove. It circled above the water, found no place to land, and returned. Next, he released a swallow, which also found no perch and flew back. Finally, he released a raven. It saw that the waters had receded, cried out in delight, flew off in search of food, and did not return. It is remarkable that these accounts are not the sole written records inherited from ancient Sumer. Comparable narratives have been discovered on other clay tablets excavated in Iraq, some of which are nearly 5,000 years old. In 1922, British archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley embarked on a groundbreaking expedition across the Mesopotamian desert between Baghdad and the Persian Gulf. There, he unearthed the lost city of Ur, once a flourishing center of Sumerian civilization, and its royal tombs, silent chambers of kings long buried. Beneath one such tomb, Woolley and his team discovered a pristine layer of clay sediment over 2 meters thick. Its origin? A mystery at first. But scientific analysis revealed the truth. The clay was flood-borne silt, deposited by waters that once surged across the land. To Woolley, this was no coincidence. He saw in that silent stratum a powerful echo of Mesopotamian legend and a striking parallel to the biblical tale of the Great Flood. It was, perhaps, a trace of catastrophe preserved in the earth itself. Greek mythology contains a similar legend. Zeus, the sovereign of the heavens, ruled over the earth. When he saw that humans had become increasingly cruel and immoral, hearts filled with wickedness, the strong devouring the weak, and justice and civility vanishing, he proclaimed, "Humanity is the root of all misfortune. If I show them compassion and allow them to enjoy life, they will multiply swiftly and grow arrogant. If I punish them with suffering, they may temporarily restrain themselves, but soon they will relapse into depravity and commit every evil imaginable. Thus, it would be better to eliminate them all at once." He convened a council of the gods, and together they decided to send torrential rains and unleash a flood to drown mankind. Prometheus, the defiant titan who gifted fire to mankind and suffered for it, had a son named Deucalion. Living among mortals, Deucalion urged them toward virtue, warning that the gods would not tolerate wickedness forever. One day, he ascended Mount Olympus to visit his father. Prometheus, bound yet watchful, whispered a grave warning. "Zeus will soon unleash a flood to cleanse the earth of humanity. You must prepare." Deucalion descended and built a sturdy ark, loading it with the necessities of life. Then the heavens broke open. Rain fell in torrents, day after day, month after month. The floods swallowed the land, drowning even the highest peaks. When the deluge finally ceased, Deucalion's vessel drifted to the summit of Mount Parnassus. The waters slowly withdrew, revealing a barren world. Alone, Deucalion and his wife sought divine counsel. The gods delivered a riddle. "Veil your heads, walk the hillside, cast behind you the bones of your mother." They pondered the message and understood. The earth was their mother. Her bones were stones. So they walked, heads covered, tossing stones behind them, and the stones transformed, his into men, hers into women. From silence and stone, humanity was born again. China's ancient texts echo with the memory of a world drowned. In the Huainanzi, the cosmos itself falters. The 4 pillars crumbled, the 9 provinces split. Heaven no longer cloaked the earth, and the land could not bear its weight. Fire raged unending, and water surged without rest. The commentary whispers, "The floodwaters rose from depths beyond 300 ren. Ren is a unit of length. 1 ren is equal to 8 feet. The canon of Yao in the Book of Documents paints a sweeping vision.
Vast and roaring, the flood carved through the land, engulfing mountains and hills, rising in waves that touched the sky. The classic of mountains and seas speaks in mythic tones. The floodwaters reached the heavens. Gun, defiant, stole the divine soil that grew of its own accord, seeking to dam the deluge. In the heavenly questions of the songs of Chu, the poet wonders, how can the abyss be filled? How can the ninefold land be enclosed? Mencius recalls the chaos of Yao's reign. The world was not yet settled. Floodwaters surged across the land, reversing rivers, drowning the realm. Serpents and dragons claimed the earth. The people, displaced, nested in trees or carved homes into the hills. The classic of Mountains and Seas records that the Great Flood managed by Yu the Great took place during Emperor Yao's reign, estimated to have occurred around 4,400 to 4,300 years ago. Remarkably, the flood described in the Western Bible, the one involving Noah's Ark, is also believed to have happened during the same period, approximately 4,400 to 4,300 years ago. The timing of these two events from vastly different cultures is strikingly consistent. According to historical records, this global flood was the most recent large-scale disaster to affect humanity, nearly obliterating the civilizations of its time. The legend of Yu the Great and his conquest of the flood is etched into the cultural memory of China, known to every child and elder alike. Yet, for generations, skeptics rooted in empirical science have questioned its plausibility. How could a civilization so ancient, so seemingly rudimentary, have achieved the monumental feat of dredging vast rivers and reshaping the land into 9 provinces? With little archaeological evidence to support it, the story was long relegated to the realm of myth, a poetic echo of a past too grand to be real. Then came a turning point. In 2016, the prestigious journal Science published a groundbreaking study that confirmed the occurrence of a massive flood in China nearly 4,000 years ago, an event long thought to be mythical. At the helm of this research was Dr. Wu Qinglong, a geologist from Nanjing Normal University, whose findings breathed new life into ancient legends. In 2007, Dr. Wu Qinglong discovered unusually thick sediment layers along the Yellow River, some towering 50 meters above the river itself. These 20-meter-thick deposits point to an extraordinarily destructive flood, he explained. Carbon gating of organic material embedded in the sediment placed the event around 4,000 years ago, precisely aligning with the legendary flood era of Yao, Shun, and Yu. Dr. Granger of Purdue University, a co-author of the study, noted, the flood's discharge ranged from 300,000 to 500,000 cubic meters per second, rivaling the Amazon's greatest floods. It was the largest known flood on Earth in the past 10,000 years, more than 500 times the volume of the Yellow River's biggest rainfall-driven flood. What's remarkable is that while other civilizations fled from such disasters, the Chinese chose to tame the waters. Archaeological discoveries have continued to lend weight to the historicity of China's ancient flood. Beginning in 1999, the Institute of Cultural Relics at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences launched excavations at the Lajia site, situated in Lajia Village, Minhe County, Qinghai Province, along the northern bank of the Yellow River. The site was identified as a prehistoric village dating back between 4,300 and 3,900 years. Remarkably, many of the human remains unearthed appear to have died in an instant, frozen in time, earning the site the nickname, the Pompeii of the East. From the silent bones and shattered relics of Lajia, a story began to emerge, one of sudden devastation. Researchers believe that this ancient village, perched on the northern bank of the Yellow River, was swallowed in an instant by torrents of mud unleashed by a colossal flood nearly 4,000 years ago. The evidence resonates with the geological revelations of Dr. Wu Qinglong and echoes the mythic deluge chronicled in the Shanhai Jing, where mountains wept and rivers roared. Legend and science, once worlds apart, now seem to speak in unison. But the Earth held more than tragedy. It held testimony to brilliance. Among the ruins of Lajia, archaeologists uncovered grand stone chimes, elegantly carved jade knives, and ceremonial jade bai discs. These artifacts speak of a society far more refined than previously imagined, one that understood music, ritual, and craftsmanship. Far from being a rudimentary hamlet, Lajia was a cradle of early civilization, its legacy etched not only in sorrow, but in splendor. Reflecting on Dr. Wu Qinglong's groundbreaking study, the deputy editor of Science offered high praise. This research deepens our grasp of ancient Chinese civilization, providing rare empirical insight into its origins and the societal frameworks that shaped its early development. In bridging myth and science, the study not only rewrites a chapter of history, it reawakens it. The Chinese often speak of a civilization that stretches across 5 millennia, but few realize that this timeline begins not in peace, but in upheaval. According to tradition, the Great Flood was not merely a natural disaster, it was a civilizational reset. The world before it was drowned in mud and memory. The world after it rose from the waters, reshaped by survival and ingenuity. Thus, the flood became a threshold. What came before was lost, and what followed became the enduring legacy of Chinese civilization. David Montgomery, a geologist at the University of Washington and author of The Rocks Don't Lie, reflected on the implications of Dr. Wu Qinglong's findings. This study offers compelling evidence that China's legendary flood was real, he said. And if that's true, if myth has met geology, then what of the other ancient tales? Could the stories of great catastrophes passed down through generations across the world also be echoes of real events? Though born of distant cultures and scattered across continents, the flood myths of humanity echo with uncanny unity, shared plots, familiar figures, and a haunting sense of reckoning. Such convergence cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. If the Great Flood was real, then the idea of divine creation is no longer a matter of belief. It becomes a matter of recognition. And the flood itself, not a random surge of nature, but a celestial verdict, a cleansing not of rivers, but of souls. The heavens wept as mankind sank into ruin. Jehovah, the Creator, mourned the very breath he had once bestowed. I shall erase man from the earth, beasts, insects, and birds alike, for I regret having made them. Yet in the shadow of this sorrow, Noah stood, unshaken, serene, a man of quiet virtue whose faith held firm. At 480 years old, he was chosen, not for might, but for purity. God whispered not of rain, but of reckoning. He gave the world 120 years, a final breath of grace. To Noah, he gave a sacred task. Build an ark of gopher wood, seal it with pitch, let it be strong, let it be holy. And so, 2 by 2, life would enter. When the skies split and the waters rose to swallow the earth, only those who turned their hearts would find refuge. Noah did not preach with flame, but with forewarning. Walk in God's will or be swept away. The flood is coming, but salvation floats on timber and faith. In those days, the earth knew no seasons. A watery canopy encased the planet, filtering the sun's light and preserving a stable climate. The temperature remained constant, untouched by extremes. From the soil, mist would rise and moisten the land. Thus, rain had never yet touched the earth. Rain was unknown to mankind. They had never witnessed it and couldn't comprehend it. So the idea of a future flood seemed absurd. People, relying only on what they could see, ridiculed Noah. A flood? When the skies are clear and the earth is calm? And you're building your ark on a mountain? Even if you complete it, how will you ever move it to the sea? Rain was a word without meaning to Noah, a mystery he had never seen, never felt. Yet he did not waver. He trusted the voice of God more than the evidence of his own eyes. To the crowd he spoke with quiet conviction. If God commands it, there is purpose. The waters will rise above the mountains, and the ark will lift with them. But the people laughed. To them Noah was a fool, a relic of blind faith in an age of reason. They clung to what they knew, to what they could measure and explain. And so they turned from prophecy and walked deeper into the flood they refused to believe. Throughout the 120 years granted by God, Noah labored to construct the ark and pleaded with the people to join him so they might be spared from the flood. But as the years slipped by, humanity remained enslaved to desire, pursuing wickedness and pleasure without remorse. And when the final hour came, the ark stood finished. The day arrived. Noah was 600 years old. It was the 17th day of the second month, the hour God had marked from the beginning. Noah stepped into the ark, his wife beside him, his sons and their wives behind. The animals followed, 2 by 2, winged and hoofed, creeping and crawling, each pair chosen, each life preserved. Grain and fruit, seed and root, provisions for the days to come. And when the last creature crossed the threshold, the sky held its breath. Then God reached out and closed the door. 7 days of silence. Then the sky broke. Rain fell in sheets. 40 days, 40 nights, as if heaven itself had wept without end. The deep groaned and split. Springs burst from the earth, and the windows of the sky swung open. Waters rose, swallowing valleys, climbing peaks. The ark, once still upon the mountain, lifted gently, then drifted. Every mountain bowed beneath the flood. Even the tallest summit sank 7 meters below the surface. And all life on land, beast and bird, man and child, was swept away. Only Noah, his wife, his sons and their wives remained, 8 souls afloat on a sea of judgment. For 150 days the waters ruled. Then came the breath of God, a wind that whispered across the deep, and the flood began to fade. The ark, weary from its voyage, settled near the slopes of Ararat, a mountain now known in the land of Turkey. A year passed. The earth dried. The doors of the ark opened, and life stepped forth. 8 souls and countless creatures ready to begin again. From that moment on, the world was changed. The veil of water that once shielded the skies was gone, and the rhythm of seasons, spring and summer, autumn and winter, began to turn. Locals near Mount Ararat have long held a deep belief in the existence of Noah's Ark. To them, the mountain is divine. Yet for generations, they've guarded its secrets, reluctant to share them with the outside world. In the 13th century, Marco Polo journeyed to the region. He recorded in his journal that the Ark remained perched atop a towering peak, buried beneath centuries of accumulating snow. For nearly a century, whispers have risen with the mountain winds that Noah's Ark still sleeps atop Mount Ararat. Pilots soaring through the skies have claimed to glimpse it, a shadow beneath the ice, a silhouette etched into the summit's frozen crown. In 1919, Russian aviator Roscovici captured a photo, a blurred dark blot beneath layers of snow. Was it the Ark of Legend? Many believed so. During World War II, Allied pilots flying from North Africa to Moscow reported seeing a massive vessel nestled in the heights. Then came Fernand Navarre, a French industrialist who, in 1955, returned from Ararat with an ancient oak beam. He swore he'd seen a ship beneath the glacier. Carbon dating confirmed the wood was gopher wood, 5 millennia old. Could it be part of the Ark? Experts thought it might. In 1957, Turkish airmen flew over the peak and saw a form shaped like a ship. 3 years later, Life magazine published a satellite image taken from 10,000 feet, revealing a clear boat-shaped outline near Mount Ararat. The world took notice. Scientists packed their gear, and the mountain, once again, became a place of pilgrimage. In 1995, Dr. Portia Taylor of the University of Richmond pored over satellite images, hundreds of them, until one caught his eye. A colossal form stretching more than 180 meters across. Could it be the Ark? He thought it might. But the mystery began decades earlier. In 1973, amid Cold War tensions, a U.S. satellite scanned the southern Caucasus, searching for Soviet missile installations. By sheer accident, it captured something else, a vast rectangular shape embedded in the eternal ice atop Mount Ararat.
The satellite photos captured by the U.S. military were placed under strict classification. This secrecy fueled the desire of many explorers to climb Mount Ararat themselves. Yet the Turkish government denied access, pointing to the mountain's sensitive location near the borders of Armenia and Iran.
In 1977, Ronald Eldon Wyatt, an American explorer with a passion for biblical archaeology, led a team into the rugged terrain of Mount Ararat. There, they found it. A massive boat-shaped formation stretching 515 feet from bow to stern, echoing the ancient measurements recorded in Genesis. Time had transformed the vessel. Its timbers were no longer wood, but stone, petrified by the ages. Yet the marks of craftsmanship endured. 3 planks, joined with organic resin, the outermost sealed with pitch, as if the builders had known their work must weather eternity.
In the year 2000, a commercial satellite orbiting high above the Earth captured something curious on Mount Ararat. A shadow, a shape, an anomaly. Scientists studied the images. What they saw defied geology, a structure not born of stone or ice, but something else. It stretched 183 meters, a length that echoed the ancient Ark of Genesis. The discovery rippled through the scientific world, rekindling old questions and drawing new eyes to the mountain where myth and mystery meet. In October 2001, a new eye was opened to the heavens. QuickBird, the satellite equipped with the sharpest lens of its time, was launched with a singular mission: to capture the mystery known as the Ararat anomaly. The following year, on August 30, 2002, Space.com published a report by journalist Leonard David chronicling a bold scientific endeavor led by Portia Taylor, a quest to unravel the anomaly using commercial satellite surveillance. Then came the summer of 2003. Europe sweltered under record heat, and the eternal snows atop Mount Ararat began to retreat.
And there, in the exposed rock near the summit, the satellite saw it. A glimpse of timber, a structure long buried beneath ice, now revealed to the sky. Since 2004, McGivern and his team have returned again and again to Mount Ararat, armed with cameras, radar, and the silent gaze of military satellites. They captured thousands of images, and beneath the ice, the data spoke. 2 wooden structures, hidden for millennia. The larger measured 123 feet in length, 24 in width, and bore the age of nearly 5,000 years. McGivern stood in awe. "It's colossal," he said, perched at 16,600 feet on a mountain that climbs to 17,000. There are no trees here, only the breath of a volcano. To find something so vast in such a place, it defies imagination. For more than a decade, Porter Taylor, associate professor at the University of Richmond, pored over satellite images of Mount Ararat, searching for something that defied explanation. In 2006, he made his findings public, a strange formation nestled high on the mountain's icy slopes, which he believed to be the remnants of Noah's Ark. From that moment on, the veil lifted, and the warning of God began to echo through the ages. And so it began. A pilgrimage of minds and faith. Scholars, archaeologists, and theologians journeyed to Mount Ararat, driven by the hope of proving that Noah's Ark was not legend, but history carved into ice and stone. Their quest became a movement, a challenge to the foundations of evolutionary theory, and a surge that lifted Ark archaeology to global prominence. Now, one by one, these teams return, bearing fragments of wood, whispers of ancient design, and evidence that may turn myth into memory. Beyond that, Taylor's investigation was aided by imagery from GeoEye's Iconos satellite, Canada's RadarSat-1, and reconnaissance data from various U.S. intelligence satellites and aircraft. The Book of Genesis describes Noah's Ark as having a length-to-width ratio of 6:1, a ratio strikingly similar to that of a mysterious formation identified on the northwestern flank of Mount Ararat through satellite analysis. In the autumn of 2010, a team of Chinese explorers led by Wing Chang-yung, alongside Kurdish guides, ventured 5 times into the icy silence of Mount Ararat's military zone. 2 years of searching, and then a revelation. At over 4,000 meters above sea level, they announced the discovery of Noah's Ark, not just its silhouette, but its soul. They entered the structure, filmed its chambers, and returned with relics, petrified wood, pottery, ropes, and seeds. Carbon dating whispered of an age, 4,000 years past, perfectly aligned with the Genesis account. But the wood held secrets deeper still. Rivets, large and round, forged from iron, aluminum, and titanium, a metal alloy of strength and resilience, suggesting a mastery of metallurgy long before history dared to imagine it. And far to the east in the ruins of Sangsing-Dui, the echoes grew louder. Gold masks shaped in furnaces hotter than 1,000 degrees Celsius, bronze trees cast with nested, riveted, and inlaid precision, vessels where zinc and lead were separated, all from an age we once called primitive. These artifacts do not whisper. They roar. They tell us that the ancients knew more than we believed, and that the story of civilization may need rewriting. The structure was vast, a labyrinth of wooden chambers, crossbeams stretching across the interior like ribs of a great beast. Some sections bore the marks of pens or stalls, as if once filled with breath and hoof. In the footage, the details emerged: a door, a staircase, the architecture of purpose. This was no village. No tribe had ever settled these heights. The mountain is too harsh, too remote. In a media interview, expedition members declared, We are 99.9% confident that the site we uncovered is the Noah's Ark described in Scripture. Geographic alignment. The Ark's location corresponds exactly to the biblical account, which states that Noah's Ark came to rest on Mount Ararat after the flood. Chronological alignment. Carbon analysis dates the structure to around 4,800 years ago, consistent with the era described in Genesis. Structural alignment. The remains measure approximately 133.5 meters in length, with 3 distinct levels and multiple enclosed chambers. One chamber contains wooden railings, ropes, pottery, and seed-like items. Several small rooms with wooden beams suggest animal enclosures. This mirrors the specifications given in the Bible: 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 30 cubits high, a window 1 cubit from the top, a door on the side, 3 decks. With 1 cubit equaling about 45 centimeters, the dimensions match almost exactly. Given that no human settlements exist above 3,000 meters in this region, and the climate is too cold for trees to grow, the presence of such a large wooden structure raises profound questions. In 2011, a joint Hong Kong-Turkish expedition released a documentary titled The Days of Noah II Apocalypse, chronicling their archaeological search for Noah's Ark. The film premiered in Hong Kong theaters and sparked significant public interest. Later in late 2019, archaeologist Andrew Jones and geophysicist John Larson employed cutting-edge 3D imaging technology. By transmitting electrical signals into the ground, they revealed what appeared to be the buried hull of a ship beneath the surface. Despite mounting evidence, the debate between believers and skeptics persists. As one expert in the film poignantly stated, some will still refuse to believe, not because the evidence is insufficient, but because their hearts are unwilling. It was not myth. It was memory, etched in Scripture, confirmed in stone. The ark was real, the flood was vast, and the world was undone. Continents shifted, civilizations drowned. Humanity was reduced to a whisper, a remnant. Now the ruins speak. Atlantis swallowed by sea. Greek temples buried in silt. Structures beneath the ocean, silent witnesses to a storm that reshaped the earth. This was not legend, it was judgment, and it left behind a scar deep enough for all of history to feel. The Bible's account of the Great Flood reveals a profound moral cause. Humanity had become corrupt in God's eyes, and the earth was filled with violence. This cataclysm was not arbitrary. It was the result of moral collapse. When human beings no longer lived up to the dignity of their creation, they, along with their civilizations, were swept away. Only a few righteous individuals, like Noah, were spared to begin anew. Scripture thus provides a powerful framework for understanding the fall of prehistoric civilizations. When morality deteriorates to the point where humanity loses its worth, judgment comes. Disaster becomes the mechanism of renewal, ushering in a new cycle of human history. Scripture tells us that Noah's Ark was built to divine specifications. Its form, its materials, its dimensions, all laid out by God Himself. And yet, one detail defies expectation. The Ark had no rudder, no means of steering. Why? Even the remnants of the vessel bear witness. No windows at the bow, no lookout tower, no helm, only a single skylight, open to the heavens. Why such a design? How does a ship survive a flood without direction? Perhaps because it was never meant to be guided by human hands,
but by divine will. When the flood came and destruction surrounded every side, there was no place to run, no way to hide. In that moment, humanity was not called to look outward, but upward. For only one path remained, the way to God. Noah's Ark had no rudder because it was guided by divine hands. This design was not a flaw, but a testament to Noah's faith. By entrusting himself fully to God, his soul found true refuge, his life found direction, and mankind was given a future.
They bow low, burn incense, whisper prayers into the silence, devout in ritual, sincere in gesture. And yet, their hearts remain clenched. They plan, they worry, they steer. They trust their own maps more than the hand of heaven. This is not faith. It is self-reliance dressed in devotion. They do not rest in God's will because they fear it may not align with their own. But the divine script is written in a language no mind can decode. God's design is not a blueprint we revise. It is a mystery we receive. His will is not just better, it is beyond.
Across the tapestry of human myth, one thread remains unbroken. The flood came not from nature, but from judgment. Humanity had fallen, its goodness eroded, its soul stained, and so the waters rose. But not all were lost. A few were warned. By Yahweh, by Enki, by voices divine. They listened, they believed, and because they believed, they built, they prepared, they survived. Their salvation was not luck, it was faith in action, and through them, the story of humanity was allowed to begin again. They built cities. They mastered stars. They shaped metals and measured time. But when the waters came, none of it mattered. And so, what survived was not their science, but their stories, not their machines, but their myths. The flood carved a lesson into the soul of humanity. No civilization, however brilliant, can stand against the judgment of heaven. What the ancestors longed to tell their children was simple. If you wish for peace, for joy, for a future, then live with virtue, because without it, God will not allow you to remain.
The evidence stands, the stories endure, and yet modern minds dismiss them as myth, as metaphor, as relics of a primitive age. They say the flood was too long ago, too far removed, too fantastical. But beneath the doubt lies a deeper divide, a world that worships science but no longer believes in the sacred. To many, God is not absent, he is irrelevant. And so the ark becomes a fable, the flood a metaphor, and the warning unheard.
It's not a question of belief. It's a question of pattern. Across continents and centuries, the flood story repeats, not in whispers but in thunder. Every survivor, every ark builder, every last remnant of humanity was warned. In China, the thunder god spoke, and Fuxi fled in a gourd. In the Bible, God's voice echoed, and Noah built his vessel. In India, Vishnu took flight and gave his warning. In Burma, a monk in black robes foretold the coming waters. In Peru, Parikaka whispered to his people, and they lived. In Babylon, the god spoke in verse, and the flood came. And on the scattered islands of the Pacific, a stranger arrived, bearing only a message: prepare. So no, this is not myth. This is memory.
Across the world, the story repeats. The flood rises. A vessel carries the last of humanity. A bird is released, once, twice, thrice. And then a branch. In the Bible, Noah's dove returns with an olive leaf, a whisper of hope. In Sumer, the ark drifts, and birds fly forth to seek the land. In the islands of Indonesia, in the jungles of Central America, among the tribes of North America, the same ritual unfolds. A boat, a bird, a branch. The flood recedes, the world begins again.
The waters rose and rose until the valleys vanished, the forests drowned, and the mountains, those ancient sentinels, were swallowed whole. From China to Mesopotamia, from the Andes to the Himalayas, the story is the same. The flood did not stop at the foothills. It climbed the peaks. It silenced the summits. In every myth, the message is clear. This was no ordinary storm. It was a reckoning, a reset. When the mountains fall beneath the waves, the world must begin again. The flood ends, the world is silent, and then a man and a woman emerge. They are not just survivors, they are beginnings. In the Bible, Noah and his wife step onto dry land. In Mexico, Nada and his beloved rebuild the world. In Wales, Dwyfon and Dwyfach repopulate the earth. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha cast stones and birth a new race. In Ireland, Bit and Biran walk the empty hills. In Canada, Etchemin watches the waters recede. In India, Manu carries life in his boat. In Kalimantan, Travu plants the first seeds. In Basque lands, the ancestral pair begin again. In China, Fuxi and his sister trace the lines of civilization. Across myth and memory, the pattern holds. One man, one woman, one chance to begin anew.
The flood came swiftly, and though it drowned the world, it did not linger. Not years, not centuries, just one season. 120 days, that's all it took to erase cities, to silence mountains, to reset the story of mankind. From the Bible to the Andes, from Sumer to the Pacific, the timeline echoes: 4 moons, 4 tides, 4 turns of the sun. A brief apocalypse, a swift mercy. And then the waters began to fall.
The records are clear. The flood story is not local, it is global. From the Andes to the Himalayas, from the Nile to the Yangtze, from the Arctic tundra to the Pacific Isles, the tale is the same. A flood, a warning, a boat, a bird, a branch, a man and a woman, a new beginning. And you say it's all a myth? No phones, no ships, no maps, yet somehow the same story emerged in every corner of the earth. Not coincidence, not imagination. Memory. The world remembered. Together.
We do not rely on myth alone. The earth remembers, not just in stories whispered across continents, but in stone, in sediment, in the silent layers beneath our feet. If a flood once came, a flood vast enough to erase cities, to silence languages, to restart history, then the earth would bear its scars. And it does. The strata speak, the fossils testify, the clay remembers. Without these traces, the legends would be dreams. But they are not. They are echoes of something real. Across continents and decades, the earth has whispered its secrets to those who listened. Since the last century, geologists have followed those whispers, unearthing scars, sediments, and silent testimonies that point to a flood beyond memory. Their hands sifted through stone, their minds questioned the impossible, and slowly the myth began to speak in the language of science. We honor them, the seekers, the skeptics, the storytellers in lab coats, for giving shape to the shadows of legend.
In 1922, Sir Leonard Woolley led an archaeological expedition into the Mesopotamian desert between Baghdad and the Persian Gulf. There, he unearthed the ancient city of Ur, once a thriving center of Sumerian civilization. Among the royal tombs, Woolley discovered something extraordinary, a pristine layer of clay sediment, more than 2 meters thick, lying beneath the graves of Ur's artisans and workers. Above the clay were burial chambers filled with offerings, helmets, musical instruments, weapons, and intricately crafted artifacts alongside clay tablets etched with the stories of a forgotten age. This sediment layer, untouched and uniform, was later identified as flood deposit, a silent witness to a cataclysm that reshaped history.
2 meters of silence, pressed into the earth, clean clay, untouched, undisturbed. But where did it come from? The scientists dug deeper, not just into soil, but into time. Their verdict? Flood-borne silt, a layer left not by wind or age, but by water, violent, sweeping, final. And so the story shifts. Before the tablets, before the kings, before the songs of Ur, there was a flood that buried a city, silenced a civilization, and reset the clock of history.
In 1968, American zoologist Dr. J. Manson Valentine made a remarkable discovery beneath the waters near North Bimini Island in the Bahamas, the so-called Bimini Wall. As investigations continued, researchers uncovered a far more intricate underwater structure, complete with multiple harbors and a twin-winged pier. The site bore all the hallmarks of an ancient seaport long lost beneath the waves.
In the late 20th century, American explorers uncovered submerged prehistoric structures in the Black Sea, potential evidence supporting the biblical narrative of the Great Flood. J. Harlan Bretz, a distinguished American geologist, proposed that a massive flood had once reshaped the Earth and erased civilizations. His theory, however, was met with fierce resistance. Branded as heretical and outrageous, Bretz's ideas were dismissed as biblical allegory masquerading as science. For decades, he was ridiculed and ostracized, an outsider in his own field. J. Harlan Bretz spent years surveying the Columbia Plateau, uncovering a landscape unlike any other. Hundreds of dry waterfalls, some dwarfing Niagara Falls, scarred canyons, jagged riverbeds, exposed basalt fields, and massive granite boulders strewn across the terrain. There were gravel mounds towering like skyscrapers, cavernous voids large enough to house cities, and other geological oddities. In southeastern Washington, the land looked torn and reassembled, earning the nickname scabland from local farmers. Such features defied conventional geological expectations. After months of investigation, Bretz proposed a radical theory. A catastrophic flood had once engulfed the plateau, reshaping it in a matter of days. This stood in stark contrast to the prevailing doctrine of uniformitarianism, which attributed geological change to slow, gradual processes. Bretz argued that only a sudden, violent deluge could explain the plateau's 30,000 square kilometers of devastation. He supported his claim with a meticulously drawn map, detailing the flood-carved channels and river systems. When skeptics questioned why such features were unique to the Columbia Plateau, Bretz pointed to the region's brittle basalt, a material vulnerable to rapid erosion under extreme conditions. In 1927, J. Harlan Bretz stood before the elite of American geology in Washington, D.C. It was his chance to convince the skeptics. He painted a vivid picture, a colossal flood engulfing vast stretches of Canada and the northern United States, pooling into a temporary inland sea, and then, with unstoppable force, pouring into the Columbia River Gorge, like water cascading from an overfilled bathtub.
When asked about the origin of the flood, Bretz had no definitive answer. That silence was enough. The experts declared, "You failed to persuade us." His theory was rejected. The scientific establishment ridiculed him, and the flood hypothesis was cast aside.
For decades, J. Harlan Bretz fought to defend his theory, publishing over 30 papers to support his claims. Then, in 1965, everything changed. The International Association for Quaternary Research convened in Boulder, Colorado, and arranged a field expedition to the Columbia Basin. Bretz, by then in his 80s, was too frail to attend. But the day after the trip, he received a telegram. It read simply, "We are all catastrophists now."
In 1972, NASA released its first color satellite image of Earth, revealing the scarred channels of the Columbia Plateau, a perfect match to the maps Bretz had drawn by hand decades earlier. The revelation shocked the geological community. In 1979, at the age of 96, Bretz's lifelong struggle reached its triumphant conclusion. He was awarded the Penrose Medal, the highest honor of the Geological Society of America. The award citation noted that, although his flood theory had long been debated, NASA's satellite imagery offered definitive evidence of the disastrous scale and nature. Bretz was hailed as a visionary, a scientist who valued truth over orthodoxy, and was honored as the father of modern catastrophism. His legacy, many believe, lies not only in his theory, but in the courage and conviction he embodied as a scientist.
The catastrophic flood that sculpted the Columbia Plateau may not have been unique. In Africa, geologists have identified a striking circular formation called the Richat structure, commonly known as the Eye of the Sahara. Surrounding this feature are enormous ripple-like landforms rising up to 15 meters in height. Researchers refer to them as fingerprints of the flood, suggesting that the region may once have been submerged beneath a massive body of water. As the floodwaters receded, they left behind the desolate expanse of the Sahara Desert.
Modern academia tends to rely on a narrow set of prevailing theories to explain the history of Earth, life, humanity, and culture. Geological interpretations are largely dominated by uniformitarianism. This theory posits that the same slow processes we observe today, such as erosion and volcanic activity, have always been at work. Given the vast changes seen in Earth's geological layers and the slow pace of these forces, scientists have concluded that the Earth must be billions of years old, with current estimates placing its age between 4.5 and 5 billion years.
The history of life on Earth is commonly interpreted as a slow, progressive evolution, a transition from simple organisms to complex forms. The Cambrian period, dating back approximately 600 million years, is often cited as the origin of the earliest recognizable life forms. As such, it marks the beginning of Earth's biological timeline. In this evolutionary narrative, humanity enters only in the final chapter. Recent anthropological research suggests that the earliest hominids appeared around 4 million years ago. Following evolutionary theory, human cultural development is viewed as a linear process, gradual, continuous, and unbroken, from primitive origins through the last 10 millennia to the emergence of modern technological civilization.
The uniformitarian, evolutionary, linear model has shaped modern scientific thought for over a century. It governs the interpretation of nearly all discoveries, from geological samples and fossils to human remains and cultural artifacts. Each must be analyzed within the confines of this framework, leaving little room for alternative explanations. However, mounting evidence suggests that not all data fit this model. Contradictory findings have surfaced, but are frequently dismissed. For many in the scientific and historical communities, preserving established theories is more convenient than confronting anomalies and constructing new paradigms. The uniformitarian, evolutionary linear model is built on a foundational premise that humans, as intelligent life, arrived late in the Earth's timeline. Geological layers span billions of years, fossils hundreds of millions, human remains only a few million, and civilization a mere few thousand. This framework cannot account for human bones or advanced artifacts found deep within ancient geological strata. Even a single confirmed case would be enough to invalidate the entire model, challenging the core assumptions of uniformity, evolution, and linear cultural development.
Visit any natural history museum today, flip through any anthropology textbook, or follow the trail of human ancestry into the distant past, and you'll find the line vanishes at the ape-like ancestors. That's where the story stops, not because it ends, but because we don't know what came before.